Why do we snack? Because we have nothing better to do? Well, people who snack on almonds have something better to do. Almonds are heart healthy and full of energy, with the crunch that keeps you in the game. California almonds. Crunch on.
This is the Best of Mike and Mike podcast on ESPNradio.com. The Best of Mike and Mike.
Hey, it's Golick. Here's what we've got on the Best of Mike and Mike podcast from Fort Worth today. Jameis Winston turning pro. We break it down even more. We do our quarterback confidence picks, and Kirk Herbstreit and Lee Corso on set with us talking about the Ducks and Ohio State, and we talk to Ducks head coach Mark Helfrich.
The Best of Mike and Mike.
I can't wait for tonight. Tonight, I'm going to go check out the town tonight. Yesterday, we all had to kind of catch up.
Yeah.
On our
sleep. Lengthy travel.
Yeah, lengthy travel.
So where are you catching up tonight?
I'm going to take some suggestions from people. Bubba has given me a couple suggestions when he was down here.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Are you really following the Bubba social plan? I mean, wherever it is that Bubba went, is that a trail you feel has now been blazed you need to follow?
You tell me. You tell me. So Bubba took the picture of himself playing pool when he was down here, and I think it was at a place called Billy Bob's.
Okay.
And the place was empty, and he said, listen, it was 6 o'clock. He said when it got later, the place was packed, and you know what? It's a country singing bar.
Yeah.
So you don't think
when you say a country singing bar, meaning people are singing karaoke?
There are people there singing country music. There are the country singers' pictures all over the walls. It is a country-type bar.
All right.
And you know me in country music.
All right.
I dig it, so I may head there. So I'm going to check out some of the places tonight. On the field, I think of all the breakdown already that I've heard and know myself from this title game coming up. David Pollack yesterday said one of the and I hadn't thought of it yet, and he's so right. It flies in the face of what you want to do. As a former defensive player, I was, you don't want to give up yards. You want to stuff a team, and I'm sure Ohio State's thought process is we're going to stuff them. David Pollack was right. You heard it in the opening. He said, you just have to know in your mind you're going to give up a ton of yards. And that's hard. He just said it, but it's hard to really fathom. Because I guarantee you, anybody on that team, Ohio State, heard that and said, no, we don't. We're not going to give up a ton of yards. And they had the right attitude. You want to think that. But there is part that has to understand, and I'm sure the coaches are telling them, listen, you are going, it may happen. It may happen. But when the field gets shorter, the 20-yard line, the 10-yard line, that's when we have to, if they're close to scoring a touchdown, stop them to a field goal. But you have to stop them as the field gets shorter. But that's hard to compute. I thought that was a great point because as I was thinking about it, I was thinking, there's no way I'd think that. There's no way I would think they're going to get a lot of yards. But that's one of the things the coaches are saying. Don't get discouraged if you start giving up a lot of yards.
David said that yesterday here, sitting on our set with us. And again, great guests today. As I mentioned, all of them will be along on the Subway Fresh Take hotline or providing their Subway Fresh Take. The big story of the day in sports yesterday broke right towards the end of our show. No surprise, although there had been some suggestion to the contrary in the 24 hours or so leading up to it. There had been some suggestion that perhaps Jameis Winston was going to stay in school another year, and I think, at least from what I'm aware of, he could have.
Yeah.
I think the conventional wisdom going through the season was, well, he's got to get out of college. He's got to get out, but while the getting is good, because it just felt like a question of time before he was going to get suspended.
And I think from the school side of it, as much as he's done well for them, I think there's part of the school that was like, maybe it's time you move on because we're dealing with this as well.
Maybe. That was what we all thought. Now, if you really stop and sort of sit back from it, as unseemly as a good deal of it was, and parts of the allegations are really ugly and scary and frightening, but all of that, generally speaking, is behind him now. None of that really has anything that carries over. The school cleared him. The government cleared him. All the other, whatever the smaller suspensions are, the crab legs and the standing up and shouting at the internet meme, those don't carry over to next season.
Where it is, as far as that, is his accuser is suing Florida State for their investigation. So that kind of that still keeps it out.
It hovers above them, but not him directly.
Him anymore. It's exactly right.
So I guess my point is, if you think, and I had Biz print up a list for me, and I don't know exactly how telling this is or isn't, but over the last 10 years, she just went through every quarterback that was drafted in the first round, and we saw which ones of them left with or without having gone
Right.
through all of their eligibility. Because I think there is a feeling that at that position in particular, look at the struggles of a Johnny Manziel. Now, it's much too soon to say. Go back to Mark Sanchez when he was drafted, and his coach, Pete Carroll, legendarily said he should have come back for another year. You know, look, I've watched basically every snap of Mark Sanchez's career. He probably could have used another year of college.
Right.
You know what a defender of Sanchez I am. And I do so basically because he has great physical tools. He is a better quarterback as far as physical tools than anyone gives him credit for. Maybe another year in college of learning and reading defenses and all that would have served him extraordinarily well. Look at here's just a list of guys who have left with or without their full entries. The early entries: Blake Bortles, too soon to sell.
Too soon.
Johnny Manziel, too soon to tell. Teddy Bridgewater's too soon to tell. Andrew Luck. Now, Andrew Luck is a unique one because Andrew Luck still had eligibility left, but he played 3 years.
Right.
So he basically played the full time. So none all of these are the perfect analogy. Robert Griffin III left with time left.
Right.
Cam Newton left with time left. The guys who have been really successful, who went through all their eligibility: Matt Ryan, Joe Flacco, Jay Cutler, Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers. So you can find examples on either side. I guess the point is, in your mind, if there are no legal obstacles, no reason to think he's going to get suspended, taken off the field, going to wind up causing more trouble than he's going to get benefit, do you think he would have been well served to take another year of college?
Here's my answer to that. I'll go back to one Michael Vick. Was Michael Vick ready to come out and play in the NFL? I mean, listen, I covered Vick. I covered a lot of those guys before in college. Michael Vick, they did not give him a lot of the field to read.
In college?
In college. At Virginia Tech, it was read here, run. Read here, run. Don't read too much, run. Okay? That's how
to make it clear, look for your first option, and if it's not there, take off.
First, maybe second, if not, take off. That was Michael Vick. It was basically parts of the field. All right? So, was he ready to come to the NFL? Could he use another year of seasoning? Absolutely. He was the number one pick in the draft. Why go back? Why would you even think about going back to school? All you're doing is setting yourself up to either get hurt, possibly, or have a year like a Jadeveon Clowney, who was so worried maybe about getting hurt that who knows how your play goes. Now, quarterback's a different position. My point is, Jameis Winston, in my opinion, if the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to take a quarterback, are going to select him, which would make him the number one pick in the draft. And from a football standpoint, he is way farther ahead than Michael Vick was from getting ready to play pro football. There is in Michael Vick did absolutely the right thing. You're going to be the number one pick in the draft. By the way, you can't get any higher than that.
Right.
Why would you risk anything going back? And listen, if you want to go back, that's fine, because we've had guys that have done that could have been the number one pick in the draft.
Well, Peyton Manning did it.
Exactly
Matt
right.
Leinart did it.
That's exactly right.
Andrew Luck did it.
Yes, so you can. I'm not saying people don't do it, but as far as a question of going back or not a chance. Not a chance I would go back.
Here's the one thing I'd say. That obviously the specter of injury hangs over all of these guys, as it did with Clowney and as it does with anybody else. What I've learned, that I was not nearly as aware of this as I am now based upon the Todd Gurley story and the Clowney story, that they have huge insurance policies for these guys, not only in the event that they never play again, but in the event that they have an injury that drops them in the draft. A kid like Winston, the only question mark on him seems to be about his maturity. And you can take another year and learn and play. And I don't know, it seems to me like that's something that if it were an option, especially in a day and age, I know they want to get the clock started ticking so they can get to their second deal, which is where they make the really big money on the pro level. I don't know. It just feels to me like it's something I might seriously consider.
Let me take you another route on that. From on the field, look at some of the other number one picks who have gone over there. Do you think Jameis Winston on the field? He's pretty prepared.
I think he's the best one since Luck.
I think he's absolutely so very well prepared on the field. I know we threw a lot of interceptions. I get that. But I'm telling you, when you put his game into the pros, it fits, and I think he's going to be really good.
No, I think it's going to be the first pick, so I agree with that.
So everybody talks about the maturity. Let me ask you this. Do you go back to the school where you've had your issues, or you get into the pro game where you're surrounded by professionals, where you're surrounded by professional coaches? And now the whole job is football. The job is not 20 hours a week of football. If you can get more, so be it. And then then you're off on your own and you're waiting for that phone call because you're in college where you're a demigod, whereas we're finding out everybody's bending over backwards for you. Now you're in the pros. Now, when you're the number one pick, certainly you're a star. But let me tell you what, in that locker room, he's going to have to earn his way in that locker room where he leads there. He's been leading that locker room. And let me tell you, from everything I understand and hear and talk to from people down there, he's a great leader in the locker room.
On the field. That's what I'm talking about.
But he has to earn that off in the locker room, on the field there. And now you're surrounded by professionals. And they can have, I think, a good influence on you more than you basically having your way and doing whatever you want to do in college.
Well, let's separate the two off-the-field levels of transgression that a guy like him was involved in, okay? Let's take the sexual assault allegations out of this discussion because they don't have any place in this discussion. That's a much too serious thing. If there had been charges brought against him or whatever, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But let's talk about, for lack of a better way of putting it, the knucklehead stuff, right? The crab leg incident, the Burger King soda incident, the BB gun and the internet meme, jumping up and shouting out that ridiculously stupid thing. That's the kind of stuff that if you do in the pros, right? Do you not lose the respect of everybody? Yes. Do you not need to have the emotional maturity to walk into that room and be like, all right, guys, I get it. I know I'm a rookie, but I'm now the team, right? This is now my team. Whoever drafts him number one, it's now Jameis Winston's team. That's the reality of it, right? It's the reality of Indianapolis when they got Luck and of Washington when they got Griffin, and that's just the way it's going to be. And look how badly it's going in Washington. And a large part of it seems to me, just from a distance, to me because I don't know that he has the respect of his team. I don't know that those players in that room respect him, and that could be a serious problem.
That certainly could be on him. I get it. I understand what you're saying, and I'm not saying my way is the correct answer, but that's my thought process, is get him around other pros. Get him around a guy like Gerald McCoy. You know, I mean, just as a consummate professional there and one of the best D tackles in the league, and other players on the team. You have a young guy in Mike Evans there who just went through being a rookie, and his counterpart at Texas A&M, a high-profile rookie. We saw the issues that he had. If you can't learn from that, I'm not saying you're going to, but
that's Manziel you're talking about, for those who don't know.
I'm sorry, yeah. There's part of me that thinks getting in a professional setting could help the situation. And I'm sure there are going to be those that say, well, it certainly didn't help Johnny Manziel. Now, one of the biggest differences is going to be that if Jameis Winston goes to Tampa Bay, Jameis Winston is going to be your starting quarterback. Jameis Winston's going to be the guy. In Cleveland, it didn't start that way. You know, there was a competition, then he was a backup, and even Manziel said, I didn't put into it what I needed. That could be a difference as well.
And Winston is 1,000 times more pro-ready, just looking at it.
Without a doubt.
I'm not Todd McShay, I'm not Mel Kiper, but anyone with eyes can look at the field and say, that kid's ready to play quarterback in the NFL, and Manziel was not.
Absolutely.
Having raised, let me make my opinion clear.
Go ahead. Yes.
Having raised all the questions I have, he absolutely is right to go, and I believe he should and will go number one in the draft. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. You could save hundreds on your car, business, or recreational vehicle insurance from a local independent agent. Go to Progressive.com today. Now that's Progressive. Let's hear from what some of our guys were saying yesterday. Again, this news broke right at the end, literally the last segment of our show yesterday. So everybody had their shot at responding to it. Here was a little bit of what Jesse Palmer had to say with Colin yesterday here on ESPN Radio.
Just want to talk about him physically for a second. He's as ready as any quarterback I can remember in a long time coming out. From an X's and O's standpoint, in my opinion, he's as ready as Andrew Luck when he took the field in the National Football League. His football IQ is off the charts.
Yeah, to me, I say he's the best I've seen since Luck.
And for anyone that wants to talk about interceptions, and he does throw them, but as I've always said, he will try and put the ball in there, sometimes too aggressively. I'd rather pull a guy back than tell him I need more. How many interceptions did Andrew Luck throw his rookie year? How many interceptions did Peyton Manning throw his first year? 28, if you don't remember, 25 touchdowns. And I don't want to put him in that category already, but my point is, guys that are pocket passers who sling the ball down the field with confidence, early on, they throw interceptions. And Jameis may as well, but I'll take it. I'll take it because I agree his football IQ is high. His reading ability is excellent.
I'll tell you who he looks like to me. If you want my opinion on who he looks like, we always take a guy and project him and say he could be the next this or that. To me, he looks like Ben. He looks like Ben Roethlisberger. He stands back there tall in the pocket.
Can escape.
Big and thick and strong and flings it. But then when he needs to move, he may not be the fastest guy in the world, but he moves, extends a play, runs every once in a while, takes a hit, delivers a hit. To me, he looks a little bit like Ben Roethlisberger. Now, if he should have 3/4 of Roethlisberger's success, then obviously you take it in a minute. So I would take him number one. Now, you got to sit down. You got to look in his eyes. You got to figure out that the knucklehead side of him is not going to override the greatness in him, because he clearly has so much greatness.
That's the chance you're taking, because just with Johnny Manziel, and I said it, and any others, and I'm naming names here, but it's just ones I'm thinking of, but there are plenty that do it. What did Johnny Manziel say? You know, I'm going to do everything I have to do, you know, from on the field to off the field working, and you hear him say all these things, and then, you know, sometimes you don't do them. You say them. Actions speak louder than words. Jameis Winston has that big personality. I think coaches are going to love him. There's not going to be an issue, him at the blackboard talking football, but it's the off-the-field issues, and he's going to have to convince coaches that that's behind him, and I think talking he can. But like anything else, it's going to have to be your actions. Obviously, if he's the number one pick in the draft, the spotlight is on him. He'll have every opportunity to be the knucklehead if he wants to be. So that's going to, then his actions are going to speak so much louder than his words.
The first thing you hope he isn't the knucklehead in Vegas with Justin Bieber, right? That's the ultimate level. That's the top level knucklehead that you can be. That's what Johnny Manziel decided he wanted to do with the time leading up to his rookie year in the NFL, and you saw the result.
Yeah.
And now here he is a year later saying, well, I guess I should have worked harder.
Yeah.
Well, you know, you don't get that many, well, I guess I should have in life. When you get handed the world on a silver platter and say, most people don't get that opportunity twice. Most people don't have the world on a silver platter handed to them, push it away and say, you know what, I'll get to that when it seems like my list of priorities gets there. So I don't think you're going to have that problem with Jameis.
I don't either. I really don't
is
either.
my guess.
Yeah.
Let's see. I had one more on him from Mel. So here's Mel Kiper, and the question to Mel was, why would you be concerned? Why would you take Mariota? I think everyone is looking at them and seeing the same things we're seing. Mariota, gifted in a variety of ways,
without a doubt.
Zero questions off the field, but not playing in an offense that allows him to demonstrate all of the pro-ready potential that Winston has. So the question to Mel is, why would a team take Mariota over Winston? Here's what he said.
If I feel like he will be the perfect CEO, because quarterbacks that have won in this league and won big have no issues. They have no problems coming in, going out. They are perfect. You don't have to worry about them. They set the tone for everybody else. If your quarterback isn't setting that tone properly, it trickles down to everybody else who may have a slight issue.
What do you think of that, Mike?
Well, I mean, listen, we know most of these quarterbacks don't have issues. You can name Ben had some issues. Ben's one of the top. He certainly had some issues out there. But when you're listing the top quarterbacks, it's certainly not every other one where you say, oh, he had some issues, he had some issues. That's true. They don't. And we all get that part of it. There's zero worry for Mariota about that. The worry is, can he take the game he's playing in college and make it the game in the pros? And maybe he can. Maybe he's that gifted where he can now work to a pro style and play well. The question to a Lovie Smith is, are you willing to take that chance? Are you willing to try and teach this guy the pro level and think he can adapt to it, or take a guy who was already pro ready the way he plays?
That's going to be the question. I ultimately believe the answer is going to be yes. I've been saying this for months. I will be very surprised if the second pick in the NFL draft comes up and Jameis Winston is still on the board. Now, it might not be Tampa, right? There are a lot of teams out there that to me, that pick now becomes extraordinarily valuable, because between Winston and Mariota and Amari Cooper, there are a lot of players right at the top of this draft, and there are a variety of teams in there that are going to have new.
But Tampa needs a quarterback.
They do need a quarterback. But if you're a little too worried about that, then maybe you trade out of that spot and you go a little bit of a different direction.
Right.
I get it. Look, I mean, the Jets are sitting at 6. The Jets need a quarterback, I think. And I assume whoever their new coach is coming in is probably going to think that. So, you know, do I think it's impossible? They might try and bundle up. They got a ton of draft picks to try and bundle some up and move up there to try and get one of the quarterbacks. I don't think that's impossible.
We've seen King's ransom packages. Just look at the Rams and the Washington Redskins for RG3. So, you know, can you be swayed by the gold of a great package?
RG3 won the Heisman, was phenomenal, had a million things going for him, and everybody loved him. I'll say this right now. Going back to them as prospects, I think Winston's a better prospect than Griffin was.
Oh, I agree with that. Yes.
I mean, but there was a debate over whether Griffin was going to go ahead of Luck.
No.
I think Winston is a better prospect.
I agree. To me, I'm as stuck in my ways about this that you better be able to throw from the pocket, and that's what this kid can do.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike.
The best of Mike and Mike.
All right, Joe Flacco this past season was 16th in quarterback rating. And again, I want to find that sound. It was from Michael Kay's show, if we can. Steve Young on Monday. The quote that I just gave you was from Young talking about why Flacco may not be spectacular in the regular season, because everyone else gets kind of amped up to play a football game, and he doesn't get as amped up as everybody else. But then what happens is you get to the playoffs. This was the point Steve Young is making. He's a Hall of Fame quarterback. You get to the playoffs, and everyone's a little too amped up, and Joe Flacco is still his same level of amped up.
I get that, but he's 2-1 against Brady. Are we saying Brady gets too amped up? Well, I mean, he's beaten Ben Roethlisberger. He's beaten Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning. Are we saying those quarterbacks are getting too amped up?
Not necessarily. What we're saying is that this is one of the reasons why Joe Flacco is so extraordinarily successful in the postseason, disproportionately to his regular season success. No one looks at Joe Flacco in the regular season and says, well, there's one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the league, which is why Flacco in the playoffs takes us by surprise every time.
Middle of the pack in ratings this year, 27 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, on just under 4,000 yards, 62% completion. You're right.
Walk up to any football fan and say, name the 5 best quarterbacks in the league. Not one of them is naming Flacco.
But you know what? When you get to the postseason, you better really start thinking about doing that.
And so I was trying to think of guys who would be in that category. There are a lot of players who are unbelievable in the regular season and their performance falls off in the playoffs. There's a lot of talk, obviously, about Peyton Manning in that category. And in baseball, for years we saw it. Barry Bonds' numbers in the playoffs, Alex Rodriguez numbers in the playoffs, and others famously. There aren't that many examples of guys who are good players and elevate like crazy in the playoffs. Like a guy like Derek Jeter. Derek Jeter was a very solid, very good player basically every day for 20 years. In the playoffs, he became the best player on the field.
Kurt Schilling did the same thing.
Kurt Schilling is another one whose postseason was better than his. I mean, he was a great pitcher. I think he should be in the Hall of Fame.
He was a great pitcher, but it elevated even in the postseason when you needed to.
And to me, that's the reason I would put Schilling in the Hall of Fame, is because he was so great in the playoffs when it matters the most. Madison Bumgarner, and if you want to use that as an example, this year, he wasn't the best pitcher in baseball, and everyone would say Clayton Kershaw was the best pitcher in baseball.
Clayton Kershaw was great, and then Clayton Kershaw got to and he still got his, bugaboo in the postseason.
Yeah, which is basically he got beat up by the same team, the Cardinals, again. And here is Bumgarner elevating. So the point is, there's Flacco. So that brings us to something that we used to do. By the way, your reaction on this has been phenomenal. Please keep it flying in on Twitter through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. You can surprise someone special with a gift just because from 1-800-Flowers by going to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN for exclusive offers. Now, something we used to do here was the confidence picks leading into playoff weekends, where we would pick every team based upon their quarterback, their running back, their defense, and their coach, who you had the most confidence in. We'd add up the numbers. Bottom line is we have so many huge guests coming today and tomorrow because we didn't always used to be at the site of the championship game. We just don't have time to do them all. But I think it is worth doing the quarterbacks, okay? Here are the quarterbacks. You want to talk about a star-studded quarterback weekend in the NFL. In the order in which they shall play this weekend, Joe Flacco, Tom Brady, Cam Newton, Russell Wilson, Tony Romo, Aaron Rodgers, Andrew Luck, and Peyton Manning. All right, you were talking about a creme de la creme of quarterback play in the National Football League. How many of these guys were first picks overall in the draft? It's a remarkable group. And 5 of the 8 of them have won, or 4 of the 8 of them, because Ben is out, have won Super Bowl.
Quite honestly, when you think about it, did you say the draft, number 1 in the draft?
Yeah.
Only 2, right?
Well, Peyton Manning was number 1 in the
Andrew
draft.
Luck.
Andrew Luck was number 1 in the draft.
Nobody else was number 1. Whoa, I'm sorry, Cam
Newton was number 1. Yeah, so 3 of the 8.
3 of the 8.
Almost half of them were number 1. Flacco was a first-round pick. Romo was undrafted.
And Brady was 6th round.
Brady was a 6th-round pick. And then who are we leaving out? And Russell Wilson was a 3rd-round pick.
Right.
So they've come from a whole bunch of different places. But in the end, they are elite quarterbacks and fascinating ones to watch. And when we do our confidence picks, bear in mind the way we do this. It's not just ranking them who's the best.
Right, not that
You don't just start with Rodgers and go from there.
Right.
You go based upon their playoff history, the defense they're going up against, and in the case of Rodgers, his physical condition. Aaron Rodgers, with his physical, normally would just be number one, and he's not going against, the Dallas
That's
Doomsday
great
defense.
That's exactly right.
But are you willing to put Rodgers number one in the confidence picks this weekend based on the fact that he's got the calf? When last we saw him, he was limping hugely, and he hasn't set foot on a field in a week and a half.
It's a huge. Now, again, what comes into this and why he's obviously still going to be up there high is he's Aaron Rodgers. Him running for 15 yards and a first down while a big part of a game is not the biggest part of his game. I still think he's going to be able to do the things he does, whether it's from the pocket or just going side to side. But does that still keep him at number one? I think what we could say right off the bat, and I don't mean this to sound slighting, they were in the playoffs and playing, but I think Cam Newton is going to be number 8.
He has to be.
He's playing against, Seattle's defense is absolutely on. Actually, the top 2 defenses the last 4 weeks of the season have been Seattle number 1, Carolina number 2, and they're in this game. So Russell Wilson's confidence may not be very high in this, our confidence pick, because remember, they like to run the ball and they play great defense. So I think Cam is going to be 8 going against that Seattle defense
on the road.
Yeah. So I'm very comfortable putting Cam at 8.
I am too. I mean, going up against that 12th man, you would put almost any great quarterback lower on the list
you would.
Than normal. And I think in this group, with no disrespect intended to Cam, he would be 8 in a vacuum. Right? If you just listed these 8 quarterbacks,
he would, yeah.
And if they were, no matter where they were playing, no matter who they were playing, he'd be 8.
And he's playing better than he's played, for the season.
Tell you what, I didn't think he threw the ball well on Saturday against Arizona.
No. I agree with that.
I mean, John Gruden never stopped talking the whole telecast about he threw every ball off his back foot, falling away. Now, he runs extraordinarily well.
It's a big danger for the other team.
And he's by no means healthy. I am a Cam Newton fan and believer. I believe he is going to be a really good quarterback in the NFL. But right now, his mechanics are a major question mark. He's going up against the best defense in the hardest place to play.
He's going to have
He's 8.
He's going to have a difficult time running in this game, especially with a guy like Bobby Wagner in the middle who can run him down.
I am seriously tempted to put Flacco 1. Now, the difference between Flacco against the Patriots in years past and Flacco now is Darrelle Revis. He's now going up against a New England defense that, a lot of these years that he was playing against them, they were 31st, 32nd in defense. Darrelle Revis is a major difference maker. He will take away something, whether it's Torrey Smith or Steve Smith or whatever they decide to put Revis on. Again, it's Flacco, Brady, Cam, Russell, Romo, Rodgers, Luck, Peyton.
How difficult is this?
It's very difficult to do. I'm not willing to put Peyton up that high. The way Peyton is playing lately on a chilly day in Denver, I don't have a real good feeling about Peyton Manning putting up a huge game.
I agree. I'm already reading some people are saying Russell Wilson 7. What do we think of that?
Well, based upon the defense that they're playing. See, you can't judge a quarterback just on his numbers. Russell Wilson may not throw for 300 yards, but Russell Wilson could be the reason his team wins without putting up big offensive
numbers. I agree with
numbers.
that, but
I'm not putting Russell Wilson.
Here's where the quarterback play doesn't come in. They're playing against a team that has the second best defense over the last quarter of the season, though, in Carolina. That has to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, listen, I get how well Carolina played defensively last week. I would have been better served at quarterback in Arizona than they had going that game. I put very little stock in their defense.
Forget that Arizona then. Forget that. I said last quarter of the season. Right. That didn't include last week. Right. That included the last 4 games of the season.
Right. He did it to Breeze. He did it to Ryan.
You're
I understand.
the Carolina defense right now.
I'm not poo-pooing, but I'm not putting Russell Wilson 7 either.
Who are you putting 7?
I need to think about it.
Oh, I know you do.
It's very, very tough.
Let me tell you what.
It's not easy.
No, it's not.
We may need to allot more time to this than I had. I was planning on just doing this now.
Oh, no.
But we may need a little more time than this.
It's not happening.
I don't want to put Russell Wilson 7.
Listen,
I don't.
I understand who you want to put 7 then. You putting Luck or Peyton because they're both down, or Peyton certainly is not. Peyton is not what he was. There's no doubt about it.
But he's not playing a great defense.
I know.
Luck is playing a tougher defense on the road.
Who do you
Peyton
feel good about saying any of these guys 7? Do you feel good about saying Brady 7?
No.
Aaron Rodgers 7. Tony Romo has had an excellent year. You want to say Romo 7 because Green Bay's defense isn't one of the top defenses?
I actually am considering Romo 1. I'm contemplating putting Romo at the top.
Answer my question. Who's 7?
You answer I don't have
I told you, Russell Wilson.
You're going to put Russell Wilson 7. Russell Wilson, who, in my opinion right now, is probably 2nd or 3rd for MVP in the league. He's healthy and he's playing at home.
Okay.
What is it about it? What is it about this that makes you say, Biz is shaking her head because she's a Carolina Panthers fan. What is it about looking at this game that makes you say Russell Wilson is not going to play well?
Well, the defense for Carolina, number 1. They rely on the running game and their defense and not so much Russell's numbers. Now, Russell, listen, That's the part about this that's going to be difficult. When I sit there and talk about Russell being 7, everybody's saying, oh, my God, Golic, you think Russell stinks. No, I don't at all.
Well, where is Russell Wilson on the quarterback rating? Because that's the point. He's going to be way down, but I thought he was like the second or third most valuable player in the whole league. So you have to judge Russell Wilson on the entire package of what he does. Extending plays, running with the football.
I understand that. That's what I'm doing. I mean, I get the process.
I don't want to put him 7.
Okay, then who you putting 7th? I put someone 7. Who you putting 7th?
I think if I had to, I would put Andrew Luck 7.
You put Andrew Luck 7?
Yes. Against the Denver
I'm
defense
not
on
saying,
the road.
Well, the Denver defense is playing better, but, you know.
They got a pass rush.
They do have a pass rush. And I'm not saying Russell Wilson is 7. I'm putting the idea there. I mean,
I'm seriously considering putting Romo 1. I think if you have to ask me who I have the most confidence in playing well this weekend based upon the defense they're facing, they're going to run the football, they'll be in play action. I think if you're asking me who I'm most confident in playing a good game, I think I might lean towards Romo.
I think it would be tough to argue that.
Or Flacco.
Let's put it this way. Who are our candidates for 1?
Flacco, Romo,
Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. Aaron Rodgers. If I wasn't worried about the calf, Aaron Rodgers would be 1, and there'd be nothing to discuss.
Is Brady? How about Brady for number 1? Because he has a healthy Rob Gronkowski.
I think that, look,
I mean, that
Brady's history against the Ravens defense in the playoffs is not good. Now, that was Ray Lewis and that was Ed Reed, and this isn't. So, I mean, this isn't the same Ravens defense that he has traditionally struggled against. But he has traditionally struggled in exactly this spot. He is exactly where he has always struggled. At home, in the playoffs, against Baltimore. Now, do I know he's going to again? No. But those who ignore history are doomed to repeat it, or whatever the expression I'm looking for is. I mean, this is what he doesn't ever play well in this game. Now, maybe he will, and maybe a healthy Gronkowski will change everything. But history tells you this is not Tom Brady's best moment.
Russell Wilson, by rating, is 10. 20 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 3,400 yards. Yeah, his numbers don't jump off. But listen, I understand the type of quarterback he is.
I don't think you do.
No, I do. No, I actually.
I know that you do.
I do.
Mike and Mike.
This is really a treat. I feel like there should be thousands of college kids sitting out in front of us holding up signs as you see them coming to your city.
And a bus right outside.
Exactly right. Every single Saturday through the college football season, they are ESPN's college football rock stars. The great Kirk Herbstreit and Lee Corso are here. Guys, great to have you. How are you, fellas?
Nice. Pleasure being here.
Yeah, Lee, you were just talking about Lee doing the backflip in those Disney commercials. I thought it was outstanding form.
Yeah, it was great, but I didn't do it really. No, I didn't. It was a double.
No way. Don't say, I can't believe that.
Yeah, I do too. I just said, I did that.
You danced well there.
Did you see me?
Very good.
You sold it well.
Yeah. I'm very disappointed to hear that. I genuinely believe that was you doing those backflips there. I want to, before we get into all the other more important stuff, just because this just came up on the show, and I'll ask both of you. Mike just brought up, because this has obviously been such an enormous success, this playoff. 1 year into it, the numbers on the Thursday night games were huge. The attention everyone is bringing down here to Dallas, and the game Monday night will be awesome. And I think just from a competitive standpoint, people like it anyway. This has been a success. And Mike said, is there any question that within a couple of years, this will go to 8 teams? Kirk, do you think it will?
I do. I think it will. But it's going to require some more controversy. I think it's going to require maybe some heavyweights being left out, and I think eventually we could get it to 8. I'm not talking next year, the year after. Everybody thinks there's a 12-year contract, so we're never going to see this thing change until the 12-year contract's up. I would say, as Lee would say, not so fast, my friend. I think within maybe the 3rd or 4th year, there could be some tweaks to this along the way.
That's exactly what I said, 3 to 4 years. I think it'll be to 8. Lee, as a coach, one of the things brought up when we had Gary Patterson and Kevin Sumlin, they said, now the last 2 teams are playing 16 games. You got other teams playing more. Is that a feasible thing to ask a college athlete to do?
No, it isn't. You shouldn't have it. You dilute the product. When you got 4, it's a great product.
Yeah.
But now you get 8, and it's like, well, anybody makes playoffs.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be 4 for a long time. And the reason is because the Walt Disney Company likes it.
but you know what everybody likes and why it may go to 8? Money.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily true. You might less money in 8 teams than do in 4 compact.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You don't want to in situations where you get a lot of money involved. You don't want to dilute the product. You want to keep it Explain.
Well, I'll be honest with you. That's the side I've taken on this all along. Is that if you expand it, what you do is diminish your regular.
Well, I don't think you do it 8. I'm because I agree. August 31, we were here. We were at Sundance Square, opening weekend, Florida State and Oklahoma State, and people, college football fans around the country, are on the edge of their seat because August 31 matters in our world. College basketball, what's going on, right?
Yeah.
And I'm a basketball fan. I could care less.
Couldn't
and
agree
until you
more.
get to the latter part of February, that's when I really get dialed in. I don't think going to 8 gets us to that point. And I'm not saying let's do it right now. I'm saying down the road, I could see it. You bring up a great point, and Lee knows as a coach. And I just talked to Urban Meyer this morning about this. The 85 scholarships was built for 11 or 12 game season. Ohio State, Oregon, these guys have played 14 games already, 15 games. I mean, they're going to play, 14 or 15 games with 85 scholarships. Their linemen right now are trying to hold up. This is very, very different, uncharted waters. They need to. The NCAA needs to adjust to allow them to have more players, I think, on scholarship.
That's the question to you, Lee Corso, as a former coach. Forget the competitive balance and everything else. Is it too much to ask the college football players to play 16 games?
Yes, it is. Too much. Too much for the coaches also. Then you get into recruiting. Recruiting season was being expanded, right? Mm-hmm. I like it at 4 right now. I think we ought to keep it at 4 until we get the SEC is out of it 2 or 3 times. And then the SEC, wait a minute, we want 8 teams.
That is a great point. Yeah. But I'll say this about the 16 games. Here's the way I look at it. You play 13 now by what? By
conference championship.
By the first week in December.
Yeah.
So now we're talking 2 teams going to 16 by the second week in January.
Yeah.
We're talking 5-6 weeks later to play 3 more games for 2 teams, 2 more games for 6 other teams. That's not that bad. Right. I mean, these are young athletes as well. They get a decent amount of time off after the conference championship games. I think these kids can handle that.
Your sons just lived it. So, I mean, anybody would know you would.
One thing for sure, you're going to have to pay them.
Well, I mean,
at least pay their families. At least pay their families to get to the game.
And they're starting to do, which is good.
They are going to do it this year, but the players are going to say, 16 games and we get nothing.
Yeah.
God bless you, Lee Corso. I know I love you. I've been on that side for years and years. I'm so glad to hear you say that. Okay, let's get to topic number 2 because there's so much to do with you guys. I'm sure you have probably spent more time in the last 2 years talking about Jameis Winston than any other college athlete. As of yesterday, he's no longer a college athlete. No surprise, he's going to the pros. As you evaluate him, obviously the on-the-field evaluation and the off-the-field are different. When push comes to shove, Kirk Herbstreit, will he be the number 1 pick in the draft?
Yeah. How can Tampa pass on him? Are you kidding me? They're gonna get a great player and they're gonna sell tickets. It's gonna get their franchise excited again. But I want to go back to the decision. I don't think he wanted to come out. I don't know if anybody else has said that. I think he wanted to come back to play for Florida State. I think he wanted to come back because he knows he needs to continue to grow on and off the field.
Why did he?
But I think it had everything to do with his family and what they dealt with. It wasn't so much what he endured because he got piled on. I did a lot. I did 7 of their games. Every time, like you used to call games, you go on the field before the game for the first hour before the kick, and here come the quarterbacks and the centers, and they do their things. The things those fans would say to him when they were on the road, I didn't know people talked like that to athletes. It was unbelievable what he endured. He can handle that. But what his grandma and his mom and his dad had to endure back in Alabama, that, I think, is the reason he's getting out. That's the reason he's going to go to the NFL. I think he's going to be a great player. I think a lot of this has been overblown, personally. I think he's been immature. I think he's been naive to his world, and I think he's had to learn the hard way. But the big question is Tampa Bay or whoever it is going to spend millions and millions of dollars on a guy that has so many off-the-field problems? I think that investment will pay off. I think he's going to be a great player.
I don't think he will be.
Really?
I think he'll be a really good player, but I don't think he'll be a great player. I watched him on last Saturday, and that indecision, and that's going to be his problem.
What would you tell him from a coaching standpoint? He's decided to go.
Yeah.
And if you sat down with him, and we know the stuff that happened off the field, and what you think of him on the field, and he says, "Coach, I'm going." So, what advice would you give me? I'm going to the NFL. What advice? What do I need to know from you?
Make sure you understand that you're going into business. No more playing around. You got to be a man. It's going to be a business, and they're going to take advantage of you, and you better take advantage of them. Because I tell you what, you're going to be used, and you better use the people. Business, business.
That is fantastic, because that's one of the things I learned along the way is it is an absolute business. You worry about you're the CEO of you, and everybody says, well, he was so good to that team for so long. Well, you know what that team did? Yeah. That team paid him to be, and he was good. So it's mutually beneficial. So that's great advice.
I was only in the pros for 2 years. But I remember the first day of practice, I brought a guy and he said, "Hey, Coach, I'm not playing special teams." I said, "Why not?" He says, "My agent said I don't have to." I said, "What? You work for the players. You work for the players. They don't play for you anymore." And pros, that's what I found out in the 2 years.
There's a misconception out there about him because of some of the off-the-field problems that he's an immature guy and that he maybe doesn't have the ability to absorb an NFL offense or what it takes to be a quarterback. This guy is off the charts. You've heard Jimbo talk about him. Those of us who have followed his game, he'll have no problem making the transition. You saw E.J. Manuel make the transition pretty quickly at Buffalo. Now, it hasn't worked out for him, but I think that's more about his ability on the field. As far as absorbing defenses and learning things, don't underestimate him, because I've never seen a guy have an impact on his team. Forget the world on the outside. Inside the locker room, I've never seen a guy get his defense and his offense to believe that they can win because of him. And I think he'll have that same impact in the NFL.
I think he won that locker room even his redshirt freshman year. I think that they'd love him in that locker room. And I'm with you. I think he's number one, and I think he's going to be hit in the NFL. We were talking about this before. People say he should go back to mature a little bit. And then my thought was maybe going to the NFL will speed that up. If you go back to school, you're the demigod there again, where nobody tells you you're doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
In the NFL, now, even though you go there as a number one pick, you got some grown men who will maybe say, "Listen, son, this is not the way we do business here."
I think there's pros and cons both ways. I think there for a while, if you looked at every franchise quarterback, whether it's Drew Brees or Peyton Manning, I mean, you went down the list, every guy who was a star, they all stayed in school.
Right.
Every single one of them, like Tim Duncan in the NBA. There's something about being the face of an entire sport and the pressure that's associated with that also allows you to grow and mature. And the fact he made mistakes as freshmen and sophomores, and to me, he made some mistakes that were more about just being naive, and immature.
But one thing you got to remember, he'll have time on his hands. In the pros, you got time where you're going to school and everything else. You got people they're watching you. You got nobody watching you in pros, and that's a problem with not him, but somebody with lesser character.
I have talked. You hit a great point there, because I talked to some NFL coaches who say one of the worst things with young guys is the fact that January we don't see them now till April. And he goes, there are guys that you worry about because they have been taken care of for so long, they don't know how to take care of themselves, and we can't touch them for 4 months.
You know how Josh Hamilton was assigned a guy? Naren, I think. Can they assign a guy to him? If Tampa Bay...
Well, they did that in Dallas with Des Bryant.
So that's something that happens in the NFL? That might be
It's really a shame that you have to do that.
But if you're investing millions and millions, like a mentor, like somebody, whether it's Lovie Smith, who maybe he's a good mentor, maybe a guy that can just kind of help him and develop him.
I got to be honest with you. If I felt like I needed to do that, I'd be thinking twice about drafting him. I'll be honest with you. I don't know that you have to do that with him. Next topic, which because it segues beautifully into the game on Monday night, takes us to the other quarterback in this game, Marcus Mariota, about whom none of these questions exist off the field, and about whom no questions exist on the field within the offense that he runs. I don't know that you can be a better college football player than he has been this year. But how much of that is translatable to the next level? So I know what you guys do generally is analyze college players within their milieu, and we'll get to that in a second. But projecting him to Sundays, Kirk, how good is he?
It's a guess. I mean, as we've seen these last 5 years, you look at every college quarterback that runs a similar system, and you project and you think and you analyze, but really you have no idea. And I don't care if it's Bill Polian. I don't care who comes on your air between now and April or whenever the draft is. Nobody really knows until we see him next fall. He's running a system that does not exist in the NFL, even in Philadelphia. And to see him be under center, drop back 7 steps, look down, read his progressions, check down, find his third or fourth option. He's doing that in college in a system that is built on deception. They run their offense, and they do it on deception, tempo, a lot of formations, motions. The defense is on its heels. They're looking over the sideline. The ball snaps, and you're out of position, and there's a 50-yard touchdown. That's not going to happen in the NFL. So I'm a fan of his. How could you not be as a person? But to sit here and speculate what kind of NFL quarterback he's going to be, that is scarier to project than Jameis Winston going to the NFL.
I agree 100%. And one stat jumped out at me about him. Red zone passing. He's only hit 50% of his passes in red zone. That means tight
Quick
pockets,
decisions.
quick pockets, and the guys are covering man for man. And you got to throw the ball here instead of there. That's the one thing that bothers me about Mariota. His stat inside the red zone was only 50%.
Good point. Yeah, when the field shrinks.
When the field shrinks, and there's no more zones and open areas.
Mike and Mike, the great Lee Corso, Kirk Herbstreit here. Well, there's plenty of time to talk a lot of great football here. And in the middle of it, we're going to bring Mark Helfrich into the conversation, the head coach of Oregon, getting set to play in this championship game. Lee, let me then go to you again, because I brought this up yesterday, Lee. Who was it that said it's the tempo that no one can deal with? Oh, David Pollack was talking about it, was saying, like, look, just this tempo, no one can deal with it. Herbie, you did the game on Thursday night with Florida State, and at some point you said it, and I think people misunderstood what you said when you said Florida State has given up. I think you basically at some point realized, look, they just can't deal with this anymore, this tempo. So I, being as naive as I am, Lee Corso, said, if you can run a play every 12 seconds and no one can stop that, why isn't everyone trying to run a play every 12 seconds? Are we going to see more teams doing that?
I don't think so.
Why?
You see, because it's hard to teach. Those guys. Now, listen, let me tell you one thing. The tempo wasn't very good against Stanford 2 years ago, was it? Or against Arizona the first time they played, right? The tempo is not it. It's the players. And there's plays, and Mariota throwing that ball, and the guy Friedman run the ball. That's the secret of their offense, not the tempo.
See, I completely agree with that, Kirk. What I have said is, if you get people that can't run this tempo, it can be just debilitating for the offense with mistakes that they can make. But because of the players, especially a Marcus Mariota, the word I use is they're so incredibly efficient that they can play at this pace, and a lot of it is because of Mariota.
I've been doing Oregon games since 08 or 09 when Chip first got there, and I've watched this offense evolve and how it's changed with different quarterbacks. Masoli was there, Darren Thomas got him to the national title against Auburn. This is a different deal because of Mariota. I mean, he's started now 40 games. He is so calm. And yet the offense, it's like a fire drill. Everybody's running around going crazy. But the reason people don't try to pick up on the same tendencies and run this offense is because it's an entire culture. If you went to an Oregon practice, especially guys from our generation or Lee's generation, you watch their practice. Are they allowed to do this? I mean, the music and the speed. We're used to, you make a mistake in practice. Let's run it back. Come on back. Come on. You make a mistake, we've already run 2 more plays. I mean, you got to see their practice to believe it. And Chip Kelly started that. Mark Helfrich and his staff continue it. So when they get to a game, even though it's going at breakneck speed, it's so much slower than what they deal with in practice with the music and with the chaos that they have. But it's a combination of, and fans maybe don't understand this, their offense is fairly simple when you look at just the XOs of it. But when you throw in all that they do, the tempo, the formations, the motions that get you to have to adjust and be able to communicate, and then how quickly they're snapping the ball, and you have a quarterback that's like a coach running and executing it, more often than not, people are out of position. This game, it's going to be down to the Ohio State defensive line.
Right.
Can the Ohio State defensive line win that battle? Now, if I'm reading you, Greeny, and I get ear-holed by a defensive tackle who gets off of his block, that doesn't work. We need everybody else to hold their blocks and let me read you to make my decision on what I'm going to do with the football. The Ohio State, not one defensive lineman, Joey Bosa, but Michael Bennett, Adolphus Washington, Steve Miller, how that entire group plays will be the key to the football game on how Ohio State's defense can stop them.
And to me, on that, let's go to the defense, and I want to ask you this, Lee, is first and foremost, nothing you can ever do simulates it in practice. It's like when I was at Notre Dame, we always played the military schools, and they would run the options, and you just
the execution of it. You
can't do it until you get to the game. So no matter what Ohio State does, they can't simulate that. Then, and David Pollack brought this up yesterday, and because he's a defensive player, I'm a defensive player. The mentality is we're going to stop you. Now, how do you deal with the mentality of a coach saying, "Listen, they're going to get their yards"? It's hard to accept as a defensive player that you're going to give up yards, but you have to in this game and understand what you said before. As the field shrinks while them getting their yards, that's when you have to step up the most. But it's tough mentally as a defensive player to think, I'm going to give up 500 yards in this game.
Remember one thing. It all gets down to the players. I'm old school.
Yep.
But I tell you, the players that make the difference.
Yeah.
The tempo has nothing to do with it. If I have a lousy team and I use tempo, I won't make 8 yards. It isn't tempo. It's players. It isn't defensive players reacting to the ball. It's tempo. It's reacting to the best players. The best players win this game.
Can you pick it up from your quarterback? You know, when Mariota's looking at that Ohio State defense, when they're trying to run guys when they're using hand signals to get their guys, can you tell when you have them? Can you be able to tell when, okay, this is where I can go because they're not ready for this?
At my age now and watching it as you're broadcasting a game, I can tell that. But as a quarterback, I've never seen an Oregon quarterback who has a better feel or a sense of when to push the button, when to go from we're going to snap it every 17 or 18 seconds to, look, the safeties are confused. They're arguing with each other. We're going to snap it in 7 or 8, 9 seconds. I mean, watching this game, if he gets Ohio State's defense out of alignment, or they're trying to get a guy on the field or off the field, he will go so much more faster than he has. And it's just his ability to recognize there's some confusion or some frustrations on the other side of the ball.
Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. We will have Mark Helfrich live in about 10 minutes on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Kirk Herbstreit and Lee Corso are here. Let me ask you this, Lee. There's no question that Marcus Mariota is one of the great college players we've ever seen. If Urban Meyer finds a way to win this game and wins a national championship with his third quarterback, is this the best individual season coaching job you've ever seen?
Yes, definitely. And one stat that jumped out at me about Urban Meyer, he's 5-0 as an underdog. What's that tell you?
What does it tell you?
The guy can coach underdog teams. He got the mentality. He get those players thinking they can win. Yes, it's a great coaching job. But let me tell you, this Jones guy's not a kid. He's 22 years old. He's got a kid already. He's married. He's a man. That guy, holy mackerel, 6'5", 250. He's a player, boy.
I think that, again, here's a guy that nobody knew anything about unless you're within the program. Comes out of Glenville High School, where Ted Ginn Sr. is the coach. Mike, you know all about that. I mean, they've had some great players.
So do I. I had a couple of these players.
Dante Whitner, Troy Smith, Teddy Ginn, among others. And he comes in with a lot of bravado, a lot of confidence, a lot of self-belief. What he's doing just doesn't happen. But fans are watching this. If you're an Ohio State fan, it doesn't matter who's back there. You just believe in your guy. But nationally, to see what this guy's doing, his first meaningful snaps in a Big Ten championship game, then a semifinal game, you'd think he's been out there for 3 years. His game, this game, will be interesting because instead of the vertical passing game that they've had a ton of success with, because Oregon drops 60% of the time, they're dropping back into coverage. His ability to run the football, as we saw in the Alabama game, and checking it down underneath, that'll be the key. And Zeke Elliott is the entire key to the game, in my opinion, for Ohio State because of the way Oregon plays. Nose guard, 2-4 eyes. It's a team that relies on that defensive line. Ohio State's got to have to run the football.
All I got to say real quickly, when Jones runs, he just got to stop trying to jump over people.
Look,
run over him at 6'5", 250.
I'll just say this. If he wins this championship on his third quarterback, beating Alabama and Oregon in the 2 playoff games, it's the greatest coaching, the greatest individual season any coach has ever had. All right, I got to hit a break here, and then we're going to get Mark Helfrich in. We're keeping Lee and Kirk with us. Great football conversation continues.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike.
All right, it is our pleasure here, Mike and Mike, live in somewhat frigid Fort Worth with Kirk Herbstreit and Lee Corso here from College Game Day, and we're pleased to welcome now on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline the head coach of the Oregon Ducks, Mark Helfrich, is with us and joins the group. How are you, Coach?
Doing great. Thanks for having us back.
Well, it is our pleasure. Certainly, we had a chance to chat with you before the playoff game and a chance again now. And let's just start by talking about the performance of your quarterback, Marcus Mariota, in that game against Florida State, a team that hadn't lost a game in 2 years. And we've been sitting here with Lee and Kirk and so many others analyzing his play and talking about how he is really the integral piece in making everything go with all of the mayhem around him, how calm he stays. Can you describe that part of it, how important he is and instrumental he is in orchestrating what's happening on the field with the chaos around him and remaining in charge?
Sure. Well, you said it great. That's why you're the best, right there. I'll let it go. But no, I think it's just a perfect mesh of style of system, style of what we do, and then his physical skill set, his ability, and then just his kind of cool Hawaiian vibe of being really poised under pressure and amid the chaos of being an extremely accurate passer, obviously an unbelievable runner, and then a bunch of guys around him that are playing their tails off for him and for each other.
This is the first year of the playoff system, so you play a game and now you have another one. Normally, you finish that season, play a conference championship game, you get about 40-some-odd days to get to one of the BCS bowls to prepare. How much difference was the preparation knowing you had the possibility of 2 games after that break?
Well, I think the preparation for the first game can't really be that much different. I think the extended time that you're working with your younger players is a little bit shorter. Just how the recruiting schedule laid out and how the preparation, was shorter. You obviously you're more concerned with Florida State at some point than you are with improving your team for the long term, and you try to do both, but balancing those things. And then the only thing you're really doing as far as the next game goes is you having guys behind the scenes that break down the film, break down the hash and all the logistical things that those guys do in terms of a computer breakdown behind the scenes. But you better be obviously all in on that first game. The second one doesn't matter.
Hey, Mark, it's Kirk. I know from being around you guys that you like to dictate things offensively to whichever defense you're facing. Each defense has their own strengths and weaknesses. You were able to exploit some things against Florida State. When you evaluate this Ohio State defense, where do you look at the strength of their defense, and where do you hope to dictate things, and maybe a key or two into moving the ball against them?
Well, a ton of strengths and not too many weaknesses with these guys. Tremendous, again, mesh of system and personnel. They don't line up wrong. They don't misfit. They don't miss very many tackles. A lot of their guys, both defensively and then an unbelievable group of receivers that play a lot on special teams, and those guys are fabulous, tough special teams players for those guys. We're gonna sort of do what we do to a certain extent, and at this point you're kind of playing on your strengths against their strengths, which a lot of the credit on their defense goes to their defensive line, which is fantastic. But then between Lee and Grant and McMillan, Perry, all those guys at linebacker, they can run around and make a ton of plays. And so it's, again, it's a tremendous challenge that there's not a bunch of glowing things on film that just jump out at you.
Coach, this is Lee Corso. I hate to make a statement. I don't think your offense is great. Your defense is playing terrific. Mm-hmm. They've only allowed 17 points in average in the last 4 games. That's great. Tell us about Don Pullum and the defense, please.
Yeah, Coach Pullum's done a great job, along with the rest of our defensive staff, of just kind of staying the course. We had some hiccups early in the season, just as far as some guys out of position, some guys not communicating the way they need to, and unfortunately, it took a shot right between the eyes against Arizona to really go, okay, this really is what we need to do. And but he's done a great job of just coaching, just coaching guys, and we have a great group of young men on our team that are totally in this thing together, and with us as coaches, it's a great chemistry we have going, and yeah, they've given up a few yards, which people point to that number, but really all that matters is points and wins.
Mark Helfrich, coach of Oregon, joining us here. Mike Lee Corso and Kirk Herbstreit as well. Coach, football is what works. Everybody wants to imitate it, so they see everybody sees how your offense works. If a bunch of other colleges say we're going to emulate this, we think we could do it as well. Is this something you think could, if other teams wanted to, pick it up, and this could become more prevalent in college?
Oh, sure. I think it's it's kind of both things. I think absolutely people have and will, just as we've stolen and will continue to steal from other people in trying to get to our next level. That's something that goes on. At the same time, a lot of people copied the 85 Bears, or, back in the days of the wishbone, and that's, that kind of goes by the wayside, just that cyclical, kind of what's fashionable nature of football in general. A couple years from now, the people that are trying to do this just because they see somebody else do it, they'll be doing something else, and so we believe wholeheartedly in what we do from top to bottom and everything that we're all about, and most importantly, we have players that believe in it, and that's the key.
Mark, it's interesting in college football, coaching staffs travel around. Sometimes you bring other coaches in, sometimes you go out. You probably experienced that quite a bit as an assistant and now as a head coach. Interesting with Urban Meyer. When he was working at ESPN, He went out, visited with you guys, visited with Chip, talked about the offense, watched you guys practice. And talking to him today even, he talked about the culture and the music and just how different things are and unique to you guys at Oregon. How does that play out in the game itself? The fact that Urban visited with you guys and has seen firsthand really what Oregon football is all about.
Well, I think like anybody, he's done a lot of, he's done phenomenal things. You can't really measure certainly my resume against his resume is not, it's a joke. But he's always looking for that next thing, that cutting edge thing, just as we are. The relationship that he and Chip had, I think, goes back a long time. But I don't think at the same time, they're not changing. Maybe they're looking for at the level of Ohio State, the level of Alabama, the level of Florida State of those guys. You're just trying to find that slight margin. How can we stretch better? How can we do something just slightly better to create an edge? And I don't know if he found anything. I don't know.
One other thing I'd love to ask you is, again, just from being around you guys for so many years now, I feel like the Florida State game was a real opportunity for you guys to show the nation that you're more than just cool uniforms and a tempo offense. You guys can play and you can be physical. Can you try to explain to people what you think Oregon football is about, what Oregon football and just how it's been able to be so effective? What's the secret behind what Oregon has become in the Pac-12?
The people, I think the players, the coaches, not only now but in the past that have been here, everybody's in it for we. And we and better are kind of two things that we talk about all the time, regardless of pace, regardless of style of offense, regardless of any of that kind of stuff. Again, it comes back to what the players believe in and them knowing that we're, totally in it for those guys and just kind of a selfless existence. And then coupled with that kind of flash and everything that I think was, designed initially to get interest. We're in, not a heavy talent position and from a demographic point of where we have to recruit from that's close by, and so we have to have a little marketing scheme to get out there. But again, hopefully it's more about the guys in the helmets than the helmets at this point, and I think just a total belief in what we do.
We certainly appreciate your time this morning, Coach. And one last quick one off the field. What do you do with all your free time? Because the pace you guys go, I got to imagine your practices are, a half hour, 45 minutes?
You'd like us very, very line friendly. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of free time this time of year, sure.
Well, Coach, you've been a lot of fun with us, and we very much appreciate the time. Best of luck on Monday night. The whole country will be watching. We wish you nothing but success. Thanks for taking some time this morning.
All right, thanks a lot, guys.
That's Mark Helfrich with us on Mike and Mike on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. For those concerned, we will give equal time to Urban Meyer. He'll be live with us in our first hour tomorrow.
Are we a political
It's
show?
a presidential. Listen.
Hey, with college football fans, you better.
Yeah, you better. There is no way they're getting their 20 hours a week in Oregon.
No.
I mean, oh my gosh, they move fast.
We'll have Urban Meyer tomorrow morning, 6:30 Eastern tomorrow for Urban. And, of course, all leading up to the game Monday night on ESPN Radio, and you can hear it on the ESPN Radio app. We're in Fort Worth this morning, brought to you by the U.S. Postal Service. We'll have a few more minutes here with Lee and Kirk, and we'll talk some other big picture topics and have a little fun talking about the fun and the years they've had on the road doing college game day.
And should there be school in Ohio?
We'll get to that.
On Tuesday.
Yeah, Golick has made it very clear this morning. He hates school.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Everybody's in it for we and better are kind of two things that we talk about all the time, regardless of pace, regardless of style of offense, regardless of any of that kind of stuff. Hopefully it's more about the guys in the helmets than the helmets at this point. And, I think just a total belief in what we do.
That's the quote I really like from Mark Helfrich, coach of Oregon, who's just live with us a minute ago here on Mike and Mike. We've got Lee Corso and Kirk Herbstreit with us. And you mentioned, now that Mariota's not going to be there anymore and they need a new quarterback. Lee, Ohio State has 3 of them.
Braxton Miller's got to be one of them.
There's no way all 3 of those guys come back.
I personally would be surprised. It seems like every day you hear he's going to another school.
Right.
It used to be Oregon, and I've heard Ole Miss, and now you're hearing a lot about Florida State, and you're hearing a lot about LSU. What's interesting about those two is they run NFL systems.
Yep.
You have quarterbacks that have been successful that have gone on to the NFL, and so Braxton Miller looks at himself when he looks in the mirror. He sees a quarterback. He doesn't see a wide receiver. So God bless him. If he wants to be a quarterback and his dream is to go to the NFL, I don't know what he's going to do. I haven't spoken with Irvin about that. I have no idea.
But there's no way three are coming. There's no way when spring ball starts.
Imagine if Cardale Jones wins this game.
What he would have done
in his 3 games, Big Ten championship, semifinal, and as you said, Wisconsin, Alabama, and Oregon, and he wins. He's got a ring as a national champion. And he goes to spring ball, and then you got JT Barrett. Who we were all just saying, "Wow, this guy's in command. He is the reason Ohio State is worthy of being in this top 4 discussion." So I don't know how it's going to shake out, but it's a good problem to have, right?
One question I had for you is, all these games have been in a dome.
Yeah.
He's never played outside.
That's true.
That is true.
Check it out.
Yeah.
Urban Meyer did. Ohio State has the advantage over Oregon. They played both games in a dome.
That's true.
Mike and Mike were brought to you by Walmart. To be the game time hero on game day, you need to have wings and boneless wings from your Walmart deli. They're hot, fresh, and ready to go from the deli. These great tasting wings, a must-have for your big game party. Hashtag game time hero, always available at Walmart for a low price every day. All right, and just in the few minutes that we have remaining, while we have you guys here, I mean, the show every Saturday, it's so much fun and so much fun to watch. And I actually got to experience it once firsthand when you guys were at Northwestern last year. The game didn't go the way I wanted it to, but just to see the energy and everything in person, it was just amazing. So, Lee, I'll go to you. I mean, you were a football coach for a long time, and you wound up on this TV show. Who the heck knows? Could you have ever imagined when you guys started this thing what this thing was going to turn into?
No, we didn't. But I tell you one thing that made the show. 1993, when we went on the road, Notre Dame, Florida State. That made it complete. It became an event, not a show when we went on the road.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. It is an event. It's must-see TV. It's appointment listening. It's all of that. So, Kirk, let me ask you this. What's the 1 or 2 times that Lee, using whatever prop he did to pick, made you the most nervous about him using?
Oh, boy. The most nervous.
Yeah, where you thought, this could go bad
for guns.
For guns and
the
live
guns are legit, by the way.
Yeah,
the guns.
And live poultry.
Yeah. And I was told that what was his name, Big Spur, or whatever his name is, that he was like, get out of his way. So I think he just sat there docile, just chilling. But I heard it, so I was like, what the heck's going on here? But I'm going to tell you, the craziest time that I always tell is we were doing a game, Houston.
Oh, no.
Against SMU. And Carl Lewis was on the set as our celebrity picker, and Lee was Lee's like a WWE corner man. He likes to just play with the crowd. He'll compliment a team, and the crowd cheers, and then he sticks them in the stomach with a knife. So he's like trying to get the SMU. They're like 0-11 playing Houston, who's 11-0, and he's trying to get the local Houston people mad at him. So he's like, oh, SMU's a great team. And people are just like, we've seen this act before. We're not. So he's like, SMU. No one's responding. So he grabbed, and he has this megaphone, male cheerleader thing. And he goes, it's not working. His shtick wasn't working. Yeah. So he goes, Google it. You'll see what he says. F it. And he throws it. Crystal clear. And I froze. Like, did that just happen? Did he just say that? And Carl Lewis was like, good thing we're on tape or delay. He goes, good thing we're on delay. I'm like, no, we're not. It's live. Oh, my God. It could not have been any more crystal clear. So that was the one time. Yeah. And then one time he put his headgear on backwards. And I had to,
you twisted it.
I had to twist
screw my head up.
His nose was bleeding.
The time you had the sword, and you were seeing
they were fighting.
You cut my lip.
Yeah. But honestly, we have so much fun. I've been on the show 19 years, and Lee, from day one, people see him as a crazy entertainer, but for me, I see him in a very different way, and that's why people, I think, see a relationship with he and I. I mean, he's like almost a second dad to me. He and I talk about so many things, probably like you guys when you're away from things. When I was a young dad starting out with 4 young boys, I talked to him about advice, and he always has I call him Yoda. He has such wisdom and such great advice. So he and I have really built an incredible rapport over the years. And from day one, he just accepted me. I was told when I came in, I was replacing Craig James, you got to go after Corso, like yell at him the way Craig used to. And I was like, I can't do that. That's not me.
Right.
My dad was a coach. I'm more respectful than, you son of a gun, you're crazy,
Right.
which worked for Craig. But here we are 19 years later, and it's still working.
I think it's working. I think it's working pretty well.
It's going good, but
Yeah.
he's my man.
Well, this has been a lot of fun. We could do this forever. Lee, thank you so much
Thanks,
for coming
Lee.
by, my
Thank
friend.
you
My
very
pleasure.
much.
Herbie, you're the best.
Thank you.
We got a great show right from tomorrow coming up. Right from here, we're going to go interview Dirk Nowitzki.
Right.
And then right from there, we're going to Valley Ranch, and we're sitting down with
We are.
Jerry Jones.
It's going to be fantastic. My whole thing is, what a beautiful relationship they have. Why can't we have a relationship like that? I hate you.
But
that works for you guys.
When are we going to grow as a couple?
You have some maturing to do.
This has been the best of Mike and Mike on ESPN Radio Pod Center. To hear more from Mike and Mike, log on to ESPNRadio.com and become an ESPN Radio Insider.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Why do we snack? Hunger? Taste? Because we have nothing better to do? Well, people who snack on almonds not only have something better to do, they're doing it. Almonds are heart health for those with heart. Packed with energy to keep up with anyone. It's that one-of-a-kind crunch that promises to keep you in the game for a long time to come. California almonds. Crunch on.